All right. Are you ready to get started? Awesome. All right. We're sharing a mic, so we're gonna kind of pass off here. It'll be interesting. All right. So we're going to focus on 10 things. So or break that down for you a little bit. But as Chandra and I were preparing for this, we were like, oh, we ought to, color code so that my slides are pink, her slides are green, and then we're like, oh my gosh, that's wicked. Holy cow, we've got a great theme. So that's our 10 things. There's another woman in the back. Some of the guys got it. Chandra, come on. All right. So if we go to the next slide. So I'm Tonia Zeiler. I lead an architecture advisory team at SAP. We're focused on pre-sales. So we focus on business architecture, technical data, solution architecture. We kind of cover the gamut, and we're here to help. So even if you're not an SAP customer, there's a lot of content that you can get over the next few days that is going to help you in your own practice.
This is a little awkward. So I'm Chandra Knabel, and I was on the architect advisor team, but last year I joined what we call the RISE EA, or Enterprise Architecture team. And the whole idea behind this presentation was we both came from customers. She focused a little more on business architecture, more strategic, and I was an enterprise architect. And I think since I've come to SAP, there's so many things that I think, gosh, I wish I would have known that when I was a customer. I didn't know these resources were available to me. I didn't know that there was reference business architecture. I didn't know there was an SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework, all these things. And so we thought we would share some of those like aha moments with you. That was really the crux behind this whole thing. So yeah, I think that's really it. And again, I come from more of a technical background. So I was an application developer for a long time, PeopleSoft actually, and then went into enterprise architecture. But I definitely look at things from, I guess you could say, the technical perspective. And tools. I love tools. LeanIX is something I would do a lot with. And when I was a customer, I built my own enterprise architecture tool, and I just loved it so much. And then I ended up selecting LeanIX, and my old company just bought it, and I'm really happy about that. So anyway, I'm a fan.
So you see, this is working well.
We
need to switch. Oh, okay. All right. So a little comedy routine as we're all getting back into the swing of things. Our first week back of the year, man, this is a little tough, but as you can see, a little Wizard of Oz theme, make it a little light. Hopefully give you some really great resources. And I think you're up. Oh, yep, there we go. So I'm going to focus on 5 things that SAP enterprise architects should know about business architecture. So if you're an enterprise architect and you haven't spent a lot of time in business architecture, there'll be some couple of tips there.
And then, like I said, I'm going to think about from the perspective of what are some things that business architects that work for customers or not customers, maybe future customers, that SAP has that could help you, that I wish I knew existed that maybe I didn't know when I was a customer. I think I have the first one. Okay. So, and we're the color at the top will tell you where we're talking about. So I'm green, she's pink. Okay, it's all color coded. So, so again, this is things that I wish I knew that existed when I was a customer. And so one of the big things is the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework. Who knows what that is? Okay, about half. Okay, so SAP created what I would like to refer to as a TOGAF Lite, where we took basically the best part of TOGAF that we thought our customers could get value out of, and we created a framework around that. And then we added in some best practices. We put in reference content, so we have a reference capability model and process model. And they're kind of a little small because I had to bring them on the plane, but I put a few slides up that are in the back of the room, and maybe after this, if anybody has an interest. We also have another section where we're going to talk about this in detail, but it's something that I find customers really resonate with, and I actually just did a training class for a customer in the Midwest in December on this enterprise architecture framework, and what their leader told me was, it's just enough to get me started, and maybe I come back and learn TOGAF and get my team certified on that, but this is a great place to start. So I wish I had known that, because I learned TOGAF and then I took probably a year to tailor it to my company, and I probably could have saved myself a lot of time in that.
Oh. And so we told you it's going to be a comedy routine, right? First week back. And so I spent not only the time that Chandra spent at her company, at my company, I spent a lot of dollars to bring in a big five company to help us put our business architecture framework together. So having this accelerator would have helped us a lot to get some of the basic understandings in place that we could have done without some consultants. So if you're an enterprise architect, business architecture gives us a common language. Right. So the first column here, the enterprise domains, every company can define themselves by that. They're producing a product or a service or a solution. They're trying to manage their demand. They're trying to manage their supply, and they have corporate functions. They have HR, finance, et cetera, in the background. And that helped me start talking to my C-suite about how do we define our processes? How do we talk about them? If we move into the next column, then several of them heard like lead to cash, idea to market, right? Those were things they had heard, but they didn't really have any understanding below that of what that meant. So putting the framework in place, starting to talk them through it, we could focus on, for example, lead to cash. We've got marketing, sales, e-commerce, and they're like, oh, okay, this is making sense. This is how we run our business day to day. I use that in my company to help define governance. So who owned each of those either capabilities or the sub-capabilities so that we could start having conversations about where they were spending extra resource time, where they had trouble or issues. And we're going to talk about more of that as we go through.
And I know when I was an enterprise architect, I learned about business architecture, but I definitely have learned a lot more since I, joined SAP and just the value of bringing that piece. And you guys are at a business architecture conference, so I feel like you understand the value. But it's something for me that I evolve over time and in myself, and I see it more and more as the most advanced. So in our role, we get to talk to a lot of customers. So we talk to them and I always ask them about their enterprise architecture practice or business architecture practice, just because I'm curious. And I would say that in general, the most advanced practices really start with business capabilities first or business architecture first. And that's just a pattern I've seen over and over. And I've been with SAP almost 4 years. So I've talked to a lot of customers, and I don't know if you see that as well, but it's so easy to see it when you just kind of go in and talk to them a little bit and go out. You're not in the middle of it, and you can kind of see it clearly. So I mentioned that we have this reference capability model. So when I was a customer, I became aware of these business capability models, and I started to build my own. And I used APQC, and I kind of used all these different resources. And to be honest, it wasn't all that great. It was okay, but it took me quite a long time talking to a lot of people. And what I discovered once I joined SAP was, guess what? We have a reference model. And that reference model, we have 26 industries that we work with, and there's also cross-industry capabilities. And I can tell you that this is one of the most valuable things that customers will tell you about. A couple examples. I had a customer who paid a large consulting company $1 million to build out their capability model. When they saw the one that we had, they said, you know what? I could have saved myself 80% of that, or $800,000 of that consulting that I paid somebody to build this if I could have used yours. I wish I knew that was there. Another customer, I mentioned to them, oh, hey, capability model. They were a LeanIX customer. And I said, oh, yeah, you can just copy it right in. It's there. And they said, oh my gosh, I wish you would have told me that. I just spent the last year going around my business building this out. And so I really think this is a huge enabler. And so within LeanIX, you can see the industries, and it's hard to read from here, but you can see you can select by industry. And what a lot of times what we'll do is we'll copy in multiple industries. So the example of the large spend that they paid for, they're in a couple of different industries. So we copy in different industries, and they can pick and choose and pick the ones that they, that resonate with them. And then you can remove the rest or just kind of flag it as out of scope or something like that, but it's built into the tool. And then you can also filter those capability models by a bunch of different ways, one of which is by process. So tomorrow, I'm doing a much more deep dive into how you actually see all of these things within LeanIX and Signavio. But I'll tell you that process in general can be integrated from Signavio, and basically so that you can kind of view it, but you're going to work with the processes in Signavio. But here you can filter the capabilities. So for example, you could say, well, what are the capabilities that support our most important process? The company I came from, which was a wholesale distributor, that was lead to cash, or we order to cash. We didn't take leads. So I might say, well, what are the most important capabilities? Well, a good way to find that is to filter it by the most important process, which was order to cash. So that's a great way to kind of zoom in to the capabilities that are really important to you. And I forgot to mention, and I had it on my other slide, I have QR codes for some of these things that are publicly available. So in this case, this gives you information on how you get to those reference capability models. And that's you don't need a login or anything like that for all the QR codes that I put in there. That's it. Yeah, so a capability model, and maybe you guys know this, but it's meant to say, what the business does, not how. So it's not specific to, specific technology. And sometimes we're missing things, right? Like some things we don't cover. So you can certainly augment it. And I would say in general, it's probably going to be 80% a hit. And then you got the 20% that you're going to need to customize or add. But yeah, in general, and I've seen customers when they see it, I just had somebody tell me this a couple weeks ago. He said, wow, this is going to save me a ton of time. So it seems like it's pretty close, and then you customize from there. Jose? That's a good question. What is it? Every quarter? Yeah, once a quarter. There you go. Yep. So we're constantly adding to it. And again, I don't expect that it's going to be a perfect fit for every customer, but it's definitely going to get you really close. And for me, when I was just getting started on this whole business capability journey, I would call it, I didn't have anything. So this would have been a really huge help for me, just because it gives you a way to think about it. And then you start to understand, oh, okay, this is how it all fits together, rather than a blank page, which is what I had.
Okay, so now that we have our capability model, we've kind of got it defined. Now we can layer in a lot of information. I didn't have LeanIX or another tool. We did these things in Excel and PowerPoint, right? And that's just wherever you are in your journey. But we can layer in, like on the lead to cash line, we can color code those things. And then my C-suite can understand me better. So for example, there's what do we have? Sales and customer service are red. That could mean maybe that I've got particular pain points there that are off the charts. If you were in the last session where Coco and Alex were showing you how to do some of that analysis, could help us start color coding those things. We could layer in things like where I have extra manual processes that are causing me taking us a lot of time. So it gives you a way to start layering in information that my business partners at my company, they could get it then, right? If I give them a giant spreadsheet and 600 issues, they couldn't get it, right? It was just it was overwhelming. They were too busy trying to run the business. But if I could start breaking this down visually for them in a language that we had already started establishing, it started making sense. So we're continue talking about layering in additional information.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is another big one. So any SAP customers here that have worked with a value advisor before? Yeah, was it a good experience? Awesome experience. Okay, great. I should give you a prize. Can you give us a little quick summary? I just want to hear it.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. Yeah, so this was in my past experience. I was working at a healthcare company, and we were implementing Greenfield S/4HANA, and we were looking to take the best out of the processes that were already implemented at a parent company. It was a spun-off, so we didn't want to do a brownfield or a bluefield, but we wanted to do a greenfield, but take the best processes out of it and see how they value add to the business model that is being implemented in the new spun-off company. So that's when SAP Value Addition team actually has helped us to build that business capabilities. And unfortunately, at that time, Linux was not a product that SAP brought yet. It was in the discussions. So we couldn't use that product, but we have used APQC and the reference library and best practices to come up with that value addition.
Yeah, so we have a team of people called value advisors, and they use this really cool tool called the Value Lifecycle Manager. When I was at a customer, I discovered this sort of late. I was there for 10 years, and maybe 8 years into my 10 years, I got given what my boss called my dream project, which actually it was, which was to implement an e-commerce system for this B2B wholesale distributor that had never had a customer-facing application in the history of the company, which is kind of funny, but it's true. So when we were building out this e-commerce system, we had no idea where the value was. We kind of needed to do it like table stakes. Like everybody has a website that you can order on, right? It sounds simple, but where's the value? Because they had 5 ways to place orders, including EDI and telephone sales and in-person sales. So where does the e-commerce fit in? Where's the value? That's somehow, I guess my salesperson probably connected me with one of these value advisors, and they gave me metrics out of this VLM tool. And the thing, I did business cases for probably, I think, 13 years total, 10 years there and 3 years at another company. And my biggest challenge was always trying to come up with metrics that I could put into my ROI calculation or my MPV to figure out where the value was, right? Like I would scour, Gartner articles and, academic papers and 10K statements that publicly traded companies would do. Does anybody do this kind of thing in business cases? Right? You're looking for hard numbers, right? The quantifiable, what does it mean? What is it actually going to mean? Oh yeah, we're going to have cost savings and the customers are going to be happy and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. But I need tangible, things. So this VLM tool has anonymized customer data in your industry. And so in my case, one of the things we ended up finding out was that the cost of sales was going to go down based on e-commerce, right? It makes sense because if a customer is placing their own order, you're using their labor, not yours, right? So that was, it's an obvious thing, but we had data to prove that the cost of sales would go down based on implementing an e-commerce system. So all of a sudden I was like, where has this been my whole life? Because I've been trying to come up with and scour this data. And especially if I could go down to my industry, I could never get that because I was working in privately held companies. So I never had any information around my competitors. This site and this system has that access. So if you're working with SAP, and probably other competitors probably have similar things, I don't know. But if you're working on, you want to do something, talk to your salesperson and say, I want to get access to this VLM. And by the way, there's a QR code that's publicly available where you can get metrics and information around, competitors, and it'll be anonymized. But you can use those to do research and to understand, what other people are doing as well and what values they're getting out of it.
So now that you have a capability model, you've gotten some governance maybe in place, you at least understand who the executives are that lead those particular areas. Maybe you've gotten the opportunity to start putting some numbers in. It's the opportunity to really elevate our role. So we have this common language where we're starting to talk to our business partners in our businesses. And now that I can associate the application spend, I can associate the integration cost, I can associate the infrastructure services, the actual technical architecture to the capability at some lower levels, and then I can twist that information in a couple of ways. I can see at the super level maybe where demand, how much is it costing me to service demand, those capabilities. I could look at a very specific specific capability, but that elevates the conversation that I can have with my partners at my level. It also shifts how my CIO and my CTO can talk with their partners, because now they have a way to quantify what it costs from an IT organization to run the business. And that makes them a much better business partner when I can talk to them in their language. I took a couple of quotes from this morning from Neil, because he said, architects need to be business leaders. Well, this is how I got to be understood to be a business leader in my company, because I could roll this information up and down. I layered in from a business perspective how many people they had supporting that particular thing. Did they have external partners that they were maybe paying out of their budgets? We could put that information into the system. And that gave us a way to have a deeper, bigger conversation. Neil talked about managing complexity and guiding trade-offs. Instead of being the squeaky wheel, always getting the funding, we could talk at a capability level, like maybe where we had overinvested, because that squeaky wheel is the one we always put resources on, and where we really needed to invest, where we were struggling maybe in hemorrhaging cost, it gave us a way to have that conversation. So moving us up that strategy ladder, and I love that skyscraper, right? Because we can talk to our fellow architects in the engine room, we can talk to the middle level manager in the middle, and we can go all the way up and talk to the C-suite. So having that data at all of those levels just makes us more valuable partners.
Yeah, so how do you do that? It's a challenge, isn't it? It was for me. I'm just going to say that. Like, how did you... Sorry, I'm going a little off script, but I'm just curious because so I'm, competent in, kind of application architecture and down. How do I elevate my role to be able to have that a more strategic, or being seen more as more strategic?
Find a champion. So who do you have a great relationship within the business? Who do you know is underserved? Because you know who the squeaky wheels are, because you were one of them, right? Yes. But you know that there's somebody that is underserved, that has been fighting to get their initiatives moving, that is struggling in their position. You make them your partner, and that's how you dig in. You start finding those use cases, because once you can prove it once, then it's much easier to get the next executives on board.
And I know I work for privately held companies and that were family owned. So very often the squeaky wheels had the same last name as the owners, coincidence or not. But being able to look at things in a little bit of a different way would allow other people to get served as well. So that would be good. So clean core strategy. This is something, and for folks that are SAP customers, is this something you're familiar with, the concept of clean core? What does clean core have to do with process? Anybody? Most people think of clean core as being around like customizations, right? Like customizing software, and you want to have a clean core, which means you don't have as many customizations, or you do it in a way that makes them more upgradable and more portable, right? If I were to talk to somebody, most people would say that's clean core. And actually, that's what I thought it was. And Alec? Yeah, I when I was a customer, well, actually, I started doing ERPs with Oracle Financials in the 90s, and we talked about this kind of stuff. And honestly, it never came true because every ERP system, so I worked in Oracle Financials and then PeopleSoft and then SAP, every one of those vendors provides a way to customize and enhance. When I was working in PeopleSoft, we built a whole module. It was a whole separate database, a whole system just on what we called people tools. So we gave our customers the tools to do this. And then we said, and then at some point we said, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But meanwhile, customers have thousands and thousands of lines of custom code. But in reality, and this is something I've learned since I came to SAP, is there's actually a bigger perspective on clean core, which I actually think is much more valuable than just around these customizations. And it starts with business process. And so this is where you start to think about, and Alec mentioned it, so you try to be more standard. And you talked about the greenfield implementation, right? The reason why you would do a greenfield implementation, well, if it's a spinoff, maybe you didn't have a choice. I don't know. Sometimes spinoffs, they make a copy and then they get all the old stuff, and then you got to pick through all the old stuff. It's like moving your house and not getting rid of anything, and then you got to throw out everything. But ideally, you probably were trying to find the best practice, because we build in best practices into our processes, right? And the software is designed to work that way. So if you use the best practices process, you don't need to customize it. And then when you do an upgrade, it's a non-event. Nobody noticed that you did an upgrade over the weekend because nothing happened, nothing broke, didn't have to do a bunch of work. You automated your testing and you were done. That's the vision. But it starts with process. And that's what's interesting, because most people, when you talk about Clean Core, they really think about all these customizations, and we have all these tools that look at, technical debt and all this sort of stuff. But in reality, it's starting with process. So think about that. And we have a very robust Clean Core methodology. There's a white paper and all kinds of guidance and workshops and tools and all sorts of things. And they're all available. They're free. They're open. Even if you're not an SAP customer, there's probably some value to the way we're looking at it. And the end of the day, Jason?
Well, it's not a big one, but SAP says, okay, here's the engine. This is what you can put on it, and this is what you can't put on it. This is what you can do to your chassis, and this is what you can't do to your chassis. Okay, we want to be able to swap out the engine in 30 seconds. When your business goes down, which shouldn't happen, we've got 30 seconds to be your pit crew. Okay. Now, when you follow the rules of Clean Core, that's easy. You're not building weird widgets that snap onto your engine in funny ways, right? You're using the APIs that are correctly outlined for you. You're using modern ABAP, or you're using CAP applications. And at the end of the day, we can do that for you. This means that going back to custom isn't a limitation. This means that going back and using industry best practices will get you 90% of, what do they say, 70% of the way there, and the rest is differentiation. We can build cool, Clean Core extensions, applications. You can extend whatever you want as long as you follow the rules. You can strap a spaceship on top of that F1 car and fly to Mars if you're so inclined. And we will support you and we'll be there with you. That's what Clean Core means.
And that's a great segue to this slide, which is it really starts with the business capabilities that we talked about, right? So Tonia talked about heat mapping, and one of the things we do is kind of look at things from like a pace layering, so commodity, differentiation, and innovation. And if you think about, I always use accounts payable because I have a lot of experience working with people in accounts payable. That would be a commodity process, right? You get invoices, you pay them. Why would you customize that? Why not use the standard process, and then you have more room, more resources to be able to do things that actually add a differentiation or innovation. And that's the idea, is to kind of try to use more standard. And it's something, like I said, I'm pretty sure we've been talking about this for like 30 years. I'm not even kidding. But I feel like we're getting closer, because we have tools to help you get there. And that's the thing that I think makes a difference.
Chandra stole a little bit of my thunder there on pace layering. So it's a segue. There we go. Yeah, it's a segue. But that true differentiation, I mean, how many of your AP partners have said, oh my gosh, no, that is like secret sauce for us? My GL partners definitely at my company thought they had some secret to the way they close the GL, every week, every 2 weeks, that it's just not true, right? So if we can start having those conversations about what is truly commodity sorts of activities and capabilities, and have the teams really have a good, solid conversation about where do you apply clean core principles? Where do you add on space engines, space rockets? So where do you strap those on or not? That can help you start having those conversations so that as you start putting a transformation together, you can really have some really great conversations about, okay, today I've created 10 different spaceships and 10 different modules, and really we don't need those. We've got to come back to the clean core. The next thing you can also add in is that conversation around your maturity. So how mature am I today versus how mature do I need to be in the future? If you go to the next slide, Chandra, just use the standard capability maturity models, right? I've been using these for 30-ish years. Right? Am I all manual today? If I'm moving up that, I'm more managed. Do I need to be at a 5 where I'm super optimized? Not all of our processes need to be at a 5, right? If I can be at a 3 in most things, and I can maybe even be at a 2, or if I only do something once a year, if it's a 1, maybe that's okay. But we can have those conversations and layer that in on the capability that then links up with the value that we've talked about. It links up with the cost of the infrastructure that we've talked about. We can have much more interesting strategic conversations. Oh, I got the last one. App rationalization. How many of you have lost hundreds of hours of your life to app rationalization? Right? Yes. Yeah. So a couple of us, right? It's a perennial project, comes along, right, again and again. But what business architecture allows you to do then is to start rolling up that information in ways that let us really look at the portfolio and the total cost of the portfolio. So once we've layered in all that information that Chandra and I have been talking to you about for the last hour, it really switches the conversation on where do I want to choose to spend the transformation dollars and the ongoing maintenance costs. Where do I want to focus those dollars? Where do I not want to focus it? So if you can take some of the passion and some of the squeaky wheels out of that conversation and make it much more metric driven, it's a lot harder to argue with. Not that they won't, but you can start having those conversations. You're like, no, this is how we've rolled it up. We can look at all the different levels, go down to level 3 or 4 in your capability models and start having those rich, robust conversations.
Okay, so the last one is architects at SAP. So again, I was at a customer. I was doing my best to start up and run my enterprise architecture practice, but I didn't really I had some other people that I could talk to from other customers, but I had no idea that there was a resource available to me for free, or not. I wasn't paying for it directly, I guess you could say, from SAP. And so, if you are an SAP customer or maybe a future customer, know that there are people like myself and Tonia and Anubab and Alec and Jason and Scott and a bunch of other people in this room who we have 2 roles primarily represented here. So we have architect advisor, which is the role that Tonia supports. And those people primarily work, in a pre-sales mode, but really engage with you over time. And then we have the enterprise architects, which is the role that I'm in. But we work with customers every day. We document their current state, their target state. We help them understand complexity, what needs to fit with what to do transition architectures. We help them document their business strategies, business capability models, all of that. And it's just a service that we provide to our customers. So I wish I had known that these people existed, because I would have certainly used them. And again, we see into a lot of customers, so we kind of know what works. Like we see, I think, don't you think? I mean, we see maybe what doesn't work too, but we won't talk about that. But we're able to, just kind of anecdotally give some best practices because we see it every day in customers, and we know kind of what works, and we're here to help. So kind of bringing it all together. I'm thinking about Wizard of Oz, which is probably my favorite movie, the original, not the recent ones. But, if I think about bringing this all together, and we're all architects in one way or another, The wizard wasn't really about knowing everything. It was about bringing the right people and using people's strengths, right? And that is kind of what I feel like we do. I know it's what I do at SAP. There's no way I can know everything, but I'm able to maybe find the right people or have the right question, ask the right questions and have the right conversation. And you probably do that as well within your company, because there's no way that you can know everything. And we really do have to have courage to do this role. You have to be able to challenge the status quo. Now, I liked what Neil was saying. We don't necessarily make the decisions, but we at least need to have the courage to challenge, the decisions that are being made, and to have some influence, and to help provide that decision confidence, or give data to back up the decisions. And obviously the brain, something I'm thinking about is reference architectures and all these things that I shared with you. And if you want to talk more, we probably have even more resources we could share that are available for you, because you're in your organization and you don't necessarily, have access to, the same sort of things. But obviously, and there's a lot of industry things and Business Architecture Guild and all of that as well. And I mean, the heart piece really represents the people, right? And we all know that's the hardest part of our jobs, right? It's never the technology that's the difficult part, right? It's always the people. It's the change management, and it's getting the stakeholders involved and engaged and supporting and everybody moving in the right direction. And then finally, as architects, our favorite, most important thing to do is to create that transformation roadmap and to map out the journey, right? Because typically business people, they know where they are today, they know where they want to go, but they don't really have any idea on how to get there. And they have no idea all that complexity and how to manage it. And Neil talked about that a lot. So that's really, what we focus on is the business capability and the application roadmaps, and really kind of how to get to that future state. So thank you.
Any questions or follow-up?
Yeah, this question's for both of you, and obviously I know that most technology vendors are always trying to restructure kind of how they attack business customer value journey, especially when it comes to their bigger customers, or even as part of SAP Grow, obviously bringing new customers in. But how is SAP uniquely positioned to kind of showcases the example for how future technology vendors like ourselves and others can really set up customers for success when it comes to the customer value journey and helping them out, utilize the right resources in order to put them on the right path?
Yeah, so I think Chandra alluded to this army, right, of resources at SAP that can help you with that. So I think we are uniquely positioned, at least from my experience. I never had like an architect and a value advisor. You got your sales guys, right? They're always coming in. But you never knew about the others, the solution folks that were there to help you on the back end. So I think SAP brings that, as well as the end-to-end story. No other software vendor has the end-to-end offering. And yeah, that's the sales team. But what it has enabled us to do is to have a lot of exposure to all parts of your business, whether that's HR or CX or just core financials, supply chain, wholesale distribution. It goes on and on. So even if I don't have the answer or Chandra doesn't have the answer, we can reach back into the organization. So I think that uniquely positions us.
Yeah, I mean, our leadership has taken a architecture first approach to customer value, right? So a year and a half ago, our CEO at our annual conference called Sapphire stood up on stage and said every customer of a certain type will get an enterprise architect assigned to them. And we were all sitting in the audience going, we were both there. Who is that? We don't have enough people. Oh my goodness. But he He did say that. And I think within 5 minutes, one of my customers texted the sales guy and said, "Where's my enterprise architect? I want it. Is it Chandra or somebody else?" So I'm part of that team that's building that out. I think we have about 500 people globally right now, and we're due to grow even beyond that. So, it's a full-on commitment. And I'll tell you, I was an Oracle customer for 15 years. And the one thing that I really believe is that SAP actually cares about our customer success. I'm not going to say that Oracle didn't care, but it feels different to me. It feels like we're in the boat together, versus I felt like with other vendors, it was like, well, you bought the software and we're the best at this, and therefore you will do what, you'll like it. and I just think that internally we talk every day. Customer success is important. It just is. And so I think that's a difference that we have maybe compared to other companies. Anything else?
Maybe a recommendation for next time, like, you give me a pink cap and you give me a green cap. So
like 2 or 3 days ago, we might have been
Yeah, we did it very it was very I mean, we had it came from our own experiences. It was just putting the little funny layer on top that we did that last minute. Yeah.
With AI becoming so prevalent, I mean, do you see that the use of AI, like how's that going to impact the VA-EA relationship? Do you see it potentially narrowing the gap a little bit, or if not governed properly, could it potentially risk widening?
I mean, I think everybody is going to be using AI every day, and so I don't know. I have to think about that relationship between those two people, those two groups, whether it depends on how the organization is set up. But I mean, we need each other, right? I think that was one of the things we were trying to, she has things to offer. I have things to offer. We work together. So I think getting an understanding of what you are using AI for and kind of doing it together, I think would be helpful. I know it's something I think about every single day. I use it every day, and I'm trying to figure out how to use it because I'm on the team that works with those 500 people around the globe, and I'm trying to figure out how to make them more efficient.
Yeah, I was going to say we got through like 45 minutes without saying AI. So, but it's a really good. No, you don't want that. I believe that we're on the cusp, right, of how AI is going to impact our lives. And I think the relationship between BA and EA is a people problem. And so how do we work best together, and how do we utilize all of our AI resources best? I also think with Gartner talking more about business architecture and the importance of business architecture, and you heard Linda this morning talking about business architecture moving into even strategy roles and strategy groups, I think it's really elevating, right, the role and the need. And when we talk about enterprise architecture at SAP, at least on my team, we talk about business, application, data, and tech. So it's 4 facets. And you need to be good at all of them. And some of us are better at one than the other. So we need each other. And it needs to roll together. And that skyscraper slide that I love so much, you got to be able to hook it all together to tell a good story. So how do we work together best?
I could share. So hey, I'm Jason Teller. I'm actually a principal enterprise architect, and I would say this. I'm recovery. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm on the 10th step of them. I think to answer your question, I think this puts even more pressure on us to have this information in a repository that's interconnecting all these things. Right? AI is going to turbocharge your ability to get insight out of that data, but if you don't have it in a consumable form, you're going to be at a disadvantage, right? So I think AI is going to accelerate the ability for BAs and EAs to get that insight. But again, organizations that don't have that sort of data in a consumable form, I think are going to be at a disadvantage. So yeah. And having that richness of the interconnection of that information so that you can make the best decisions you can with an AI-powered approach to it.
And that's a great segue to the session I'm doing tomorrow with Jose, which is around using LeanIX and Signavio as a business architecture knowledge base, which means putting it all in documenting it in the same way, interconnecting it all, and then putting AI on top or inside, however you want to look at it. But yeah, anyway, it connects in with that.